things. So go ahead, Jermaine.
But I want to piggyback on you first, Elder, Pastor, Bishop.
Stop it, man.
I like how you said, so like there's a lot of people that I knew growing up that dealt with like single moms, and they dealt with a lot of bitterness. And I like how you said that, well, I put some of that blame on my mom because she knew who she was getting with. And once again, you can't say nothing because you're going to get popped. But why is it that every time I do something, I remind you of my father? I remind you of this man. You're just like him.
And you know what?
All this other stuff, but you knew what he was like before you dated him. And for some, and it's funny because you're the very reflection of who wasn't around and who. My biological father wasn't around, and I act like him. Kendra, you met my biological father,
right?
I act like him, look like him, sing like him, funny like him, like the show with both Leos, all the other stuff. But you know, I personally didn't get that from my biological mom. She wasn't like that. But I've seen a lot of people that just like your father. And you know, one of my biological siblings, luckily my father has a lot of kids, so they've grown old. But one of my biological siblings and I were talking about that, and they were telling me how they went through that with their mom because this man wasn't there, and he, you know, he had to take it because once again, where are you going? So you just deal with it, and then finally, when you get older, you finally just say, "Listen, this is what you did," blah 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 blah. But I also like what you said too about Sister Kendra. I think I lost my train of thought, but I like what you said in regards to covering up things because the church, people especially, we are all Oscar-winning actors and actresses. We are all supporting Grammy-winning actors because, you know, when you look at it, when we talk about the communication, masking, and not saying nothing, and not going through, and that's what I want to go talk about. You when you said knowing how to love each child, because and I'll say this, and then we're gonna talk about Kirk Franklin just for a tad bit too. You know, we gotta get a little hot topic. But when I finally got adopted by my adopted parents, I was a hot mess. I was in foster care. Y'all, you met my testimony, Ken. I said it right on the poop. I was in foster care, group homes, residentials, on all types of medicine, all types of stuff. And it takes a special type of someone to, number one, adopt a kid like me with a whole bunch of history. That's why when people say, you don't look like that, I would be tearing up the church. I was shouting and speaking in tongues and falling out and crying at a young age. And it's like, oh, he just got the oil. I'm doing this to keep my daggone mind. Because once again, you ain't going through nothing. Why are you praising him so hard? You're only 9, 8. What you praising him for? Because I'm in foster care, being abused, beat, on all types of medication, and you'll never know it because once again, if you whether in my case foster parents that are procedure or family that's procedure, when you walk up to me, you better fix your face. You better shut up. You better put a smiley face. And you better act like I didn't just beat you up, abuse you, tell you wasn't nothing, and da da da. And if you do, I'm gonna beat you up again when we get home. And it's like, so you just gotta act, and you're in all this dysfunction. And my parents, there was plenty of times I did stuff where they should have cussed me out, quote unquote, or you know what I'm saying, not necessarily, but let me have it. But they knew that they had to treat me different because before they adopted me, they had my whole bio. He was in this home, that, he went through this, he went through that. So they had to take a different approach because had they not probably taken a different approach, I probably would not be alive today because it got to a point I can't take moving again. I got to a point I can't take being. This is your final permanent home. This is your final. And I know my biological family. Since you know my whole biological family, but I'm not going to say too much on here. You know, read my book in September. But you know, they knew that they had to take a different approach with me, or else I would have probably just been even way worse and a hot more mess. But I like how you said the acting because that's what you get taught. You get taught once again not to speak up, not to communicate, not to say anything. You're not going through nothing. You're just a kid. You don't understand. And it's all this stuff. And then when these kids are acting up, I don't look at the kids like, of course, every now and then, let's be honest, that kid is bad. But if we're saying what we went through and how we were, then you kind of can see like, Yeah, that
Part
kid
of
is,
it, right?
but
Right.
something is really going on, and it's just like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just because we say that kid needs to be popped,
It
but
comes.
that's not
It
always the
comes from
answer
somewhere,
either. But
right?
that kid needs one good whooping, but they might have already had 15 whoopings, and it's not it's more than just whipping them, and they need a good check. They
And
need
you,
some love, they need some stability, they need something is going on, and I'm just tired of that downplaying. Oh, you're just young or this, and I'm tired of the faking and the acting. The church is supposed to be a place where you're supposed to go to get help. That's the place where you're supposed to have no mask. Why we got to be masked and acting like this? And once again, all this prestigious stuff. And we're going to get into that because I want to talk about what goes on in the house stays in the house, and family business is family business, and not even being a crutch and a cover up. But go ahead and
I
say what
just
you
want
say.
to. I just want to add to just this little segment right here before we move on. You had stated something about oh, you act like your father, you look like your father. I look like my father all the time. Look like my mother in some cases. I never got to act like him. Stepfather is something different. There was a scenario that happened. I think I was back home in Springfield, and something happened. And one of the elders from my former church pulled me aside, said, "You act just like your stepfather." I said all that to say that when you hang around something or someone long enough and you don't know why or what's going on, and it's not like you're watching them to pick up anything at all. You're just around them just because sometimes, but you end up picking up things, and then you start doing and operating like that person, and you don't mean to do it intentionally, but it just happened to come out. So that was there. And then you guys were talking about the masking of the church. The church, as we stated, have taught us, oh no, you don't need a therapist. You don't need a counselor. Pray. Pray, baby. Pray. Scripture says there's some things you ought not pray for. Some things are reality. Some things are bound to happen. You can't have a testimony if you ain't got no test. You can't have a message if you ain't never had been in no mess. And me, and you said something else, Kendra. Me growing up, I seen way too much, more than what I should have, dealt with more than I should have, had bills in my name, credit messed up. You get what I'm saying? So it pushed me into an area and into a position that I really wasn't age-wise and mentally ready for. But I had no choice but to be ready, because you had a figure in the house who really was supposed to have been a figure by title, by name, but when it comes to responsibilities and qualifications, really didn't own up to it. And so, tell you ain't been through nothing. It wasn't. I mean, I'll never forget. Once in my church, we were having something, and the first lady said, "Come here, brother Marcus. Tell your testimony to these kids." Because since I've been in Worcester, for some reason, it hasn't happened in maybe 3-4 years, probably. Every time something was happening, got called a racist slur, shot at, jumped. Still kept all my possessions with me. I had everything on my iPad, iPhone, MacBook, whatever. Walked limped right on to church with it in my hand. You know what I'm saying? And so the lady was like, y'all ain't been through nothing. You young folk ain't y'all ain't been through nothing. You ain't suffered long enough. So I was up preaching one Sunday. The Spirit of God reminded me, said, tell your testimony. The individual is here. Let someone hear what you really been through. Without hesitation, gave my testimony. Gave it like transparent. Sat down. The same lady got up again. Oh my goodness. I prejudged you, and I'm so sorry. I did not know you went through all of that. Did not know you came from a poor family. You dealt with all that. Never knew you knew about. Uh, never knew you knew what it. You know, I never knew that you knew about taking baths outside, washing up outside, and eating whatever you had, eating mayonnaise sandwiches. Grandma called it the everything dish. Everything in the refrigerator that was leftovers was thrown into one pot, and you and you ate it all. You get what I'm saying? And so that goes to tell you that people have time to not really learn. And the thing is, no, I don't want to know you in church. I want to know you outside of church, because as you guys said, the church has taught us wrong to mask everything. mask it all. Don't come in here. But when the scripture is saying to take your burdens to the Lord and leave them there, so why is it that we have to come in, and fake it until we make it? I don't think we should have to do that. If the church is supposed to be the hospital, if the church is supposed to be the place where you're able to bring your problems and bring your burdens and leave them there and leave better. I see people a lot of times, they come in with what they're dealing with, and you can see it on their face. You can see it in their walk. I seen it just yesterday at my church, honestly. You can see it in their attitudes, and then they leave out with the same exact thing or even worse than what they came in.
Right. Exactly. Do you want to piggyback on anything before I go into the next segment? All right. So as you know, and I'm glad that we waited because we know we were supposed to meet last week, the Kirk Franklin situation with the son. And I saw a lot of mixed reviews on this. And family business is family business. What goes on in the house stays in the house. He's grown, he needs to get over it. We all in our 30s, just like he's in the perfect age. We are pretty much the same age he is, and we still talking about how we finally just figuring it out, and we in our 30s and getting over it. Kirk Franklin wasn't wrong. He didn't need to apologize. And once again, I'm not a parent yet. I don't know if y'all kids pushed y'all, but I've had parents that apologized to me, that said they were wrong. And while I've never cussed out any kids, we're being transparent, it's the Maine-Chat show, I've cussed out a few people. And my Holy Ghost, even though they may have deserved it, I didn't apologize for my feelings because I felt what I felt. But I did apologize because at the end of the day, I profess Christ. And how I handled that person or those persons or those situations was still not how a person of God should handle it. And to see so many saints like, that's what his son did. That's right, Kirk. You cussed him out and da-da-da-da. You don't owe him an apology. Once again, y'all the parents, I'm not. I don't think he owes an apology for how he felt. But no matter whether it's your child, your wife, your mother, your boss, how you respond and what you say still does matter. And if you're wrong, then you're wrong. Right. He wasn't wrong for how he felt, but he was wrong for still how, what he said and what he did. And I think the son was wrong. But I want to go, we can talk about that, but then also, once again, a lot of stuff is like family business, this, and you shouldn't have said this. And I want to say all of that because a lot of people were more concerned about Kirk Franklin's image than anything else. And Kendra, you kind of touched on that when we started talking about fixing your face, acting like everything's together because maybe your father or your mom is a world-renowned evangelist or da-da-da-da. And I want to know with y'all, when is family business no longer family business? When is what goes on in the house no longer what goes on in the house? For me, I personally think, and I always answer my own questions, but y'all always elaborate. I think family business is cousin so-and-so has cancer. We're not going to talk about it until she's ready because we want, cousin so-and-so is going through a divorce and she can't pay her rent. So we paid her rent and we don't tell. Being molested, being abused, that's not family business. That is your story and you speak up. And I think a lot of things and a lot of the adults that should be adults in our family get away with a lot. And a lot of stuff goes on for years because what goes on in the house stays in the house, and family business is family business, and it's a crutch. Because truth be told, a lot of the images that are being protected a lot of these people wouldn't have these positions if the truth was out. But we have to be quiet at their expense because you're going to make your father look bad. He's a pastor. You're going to make your uncle look bad if you say something. But why is it that we have to be shut? We can't say nothing. We got to mask it up at their expense. They're out there preaching, looking wonderful, making offerings, traveling the world, taking pictures. And thank God I preached here and I laid hands and did all this other stuff. And we the ones got to suffer and act like nothing. And we're in dysfunction. And I think, there has to be a balance. with this, and it has to be a balance, with what you say when you don't say. And this is not even for people who's been molested, but once again, just what we've been talking about. When they say, well, he's 33, why wait now? Well, why say this? Well, maybe you waited. Maybe you left out your parents' house. So maybe you were able to suppress it because you're no longer in the environment. But maybe you end up getting married. And now this is affecting your marriage. Maybe now you have kids of your own and you see that you're doing the same thing to your kids that was done to you. So now you realize, hold on, I don't want to be to my children what was to me. I don't want to bring this on to them. I don't want this to be in my marriage. So now I have to speak up. And I get, as a Christian, we are not even just as a Christian, just as an individual, you change. Yeah, the 20-year-old, 21-year-old Jermaine, the mid-20s, you knew me in my mid, I was a hot stinking mess. I've grown. And yes, maybe that bishop or that pastor is different now than it was 20 years ago, but this is still my testimony. I was touched by this person. Yes, they are a bishop now, but that still shouldn't keep me from being quiet and finally getting my freedom and getting my peace because it was a family secret. And I just think that there has to be a line between what's family business, what's your testimony that just happens to evolve business, what to mask, what not to mask, when to say something, when not to say something, because it's just sad that a lot of people come forward in their 30s and 40s. They come forward when they realize, wow, had I had dealt with this, maybe my marriage wouldn't be affected because I'm taking it out on myself. I'm taking it out on my kids. Now my kids are jacked up because I wasn't able to say something when I was younger. I wasn't able to communicate. And I think that's the bottom line with a lot of the stuff is communication, not faking the funk. Okay, not getting a therapist. It's one thing for family business to be family business, but at least let somebody in the family be a therapist or something here, so at least I can talk about it. But if none of y'all are therapists, none of y'all are addressing it, the only thing is you might not see Uncle So-and-so for like 10 years, and then maybe somebody dies and you see Uncle So-and-so again. And then once again, Uncle So-and-so comes around or Auntie So-and-so comes around, and then you're re-triggered again. And you may not be triggered had we had spoken about these things when they were going on and stop so much about the image. And then when the people come forward, it's not in the quote unquote, you're trying to destroy the image. You're coming from a place of victory now. You're coming from a place of triumph, and you're just saying, hey, this happened. I got over it. I'm grateful that my family was able to speak about it and deal with it. And I'm trying to help y'all out and some more stuff. And the other hypocritical thing I want to say too is, you hear the saints of, oh, tell your story, testify, say what's going on. But then when it's their pastor or their bishop or their presider, then you're not telling the truth. Then you're lying. I'm not going to let you say anything. They discredit you. But when it's about somebody else, tell the business, tell the tea, testify.
Let me go a little further. We'll go a little further. They tell you to testify. And then when you became transparent in your testimony, now listening ears become running mouths. And so it leaves a place from confidential and certainty to publicity now. And you touched on a lot of things as you've been doing all night long. You're just in the vein. And I didn't know about the molestation part of it until I read an article today on YouTube via Larry Reed. And I seen the article about how supposedly the mom was hiding whatever happened to the young man, however far back
allegedly
it happened.
I say that.
Right, by homeboy. I can see both sides of the story, right? And as you stated, aunties, need rent money or whatever. That should stay in the house. It shouldn't go. It's sad in some cases that it happens to where it gets out there. My aunt keep calling me for rent money, and she, you know what I'm saying? Like I was speaking to my aunt who was actually in a homeless state of mind. Now she has her own place now. I didn't go Facebook Live and say, hey, my aunt needs help, y'all. But when it comes to stuff like that, that's major. It should not stay within the home, because what happens if that person goes down to the police and decide they want to file a story, or they decide they want to go to the news station and tell them exactly they want to come out. And a lot of times what people do is we'll pay you off hush hush money, but that doesn't work to an extent, because what happens is the victim runs out of the money and now they're contacting you for more money. And I actually literally have a friend who's kind of going through that in a sense, where something happened. I guess the girl was getting ready to turn 18. I guess it was, they did something. I think it was 3 or 4 days before the whole before her birthday or whatever. And now here it is, I think almost 10 years later. And at the time he gave the mom or the dad's an officer. And at the time he gave the mom or the dad hush hush money for her. And now she reached out maybe a month ago for hush hush some more hush hush money because they ran out. And so when it comes to cases like that where it's abuse, depending on, but it also depends on the measure. If we're using Kurt, we'll use Kurt Franklin since that's where we're going with it. When it comes to something like that, I don't feel Kurt was wrong in expressing his feelings. Now, when it comes to the cursing, because people, you shouldn't be cursing. My bishop always says, his former leader told him, the saints will have you fussing and cussing. Folk will have you fussing and cussing because the folk will provoke you and push you to do things that you really don't want to do or that you really shouldn't want to. He made me do. You pushed me there. People, oh no, I had to learn that because I'm saying on one side, oh, I can't make you do anything you don't want to do. But then scripture, if you do it long enough, you provoking the person to do something that they really don't really want to do. You get what I'm saying? And so I seen a lot of church folk bashing him, but then I seen some church folks standing up for him as well. When it comes to the cussing part of it, I think the wording could, but it was a heat of the moment. He was operating out of emotions. He was upset because you basically went live with something that's like me playing his music in the background and not putting, I do not own the rights to the music being played. I could get sued. So whenever, and a man of his reputation, not just that, but character, because reputation is what people think of you or what they know you of. Character is what God thinks and knows of you. So people were holding him to the reputation he has within the music industry, not just gospel, but as a whole, because he works with all artists. But no one was holding him to the character, his character in God of who he really is. They were not focused on who he really is. They were focused on the spirit of the moment of what came out of his mouth, because it's not like him since he's been saved, according to his personal testimony, to ever use a swear at all. Now, if you're talking about before he got saved, that's a whole different story, because he himself would tell you he'd cuss you out. But when it comes to him living a godly life, I think what happens is people hold people to a standard that they feel they should be at, but they hold it from a fleshly level, if that makes sense. So they're not using discernment. They're not, being led of the spirit. They're not operating in the Holy Ghost when it comes to that. It's more so, well, the Holy Ghost won't make you cuss. And anybody that's Christ-like won't make you cuss. Okay, we're striving, and I'm not saying, because God knows my heart. Right. Okay, that's a whole another story. But at the end of the day, and the truth of the matter is that he's still human. And people with titles tend to get held. He's not known as Pastor Kurt. I know he has a church and all. He's known as Kurt Franklin. But for the people that know him as Pastor Kurt, now you're held to your title and not your manhood. You're held to the position you have and the office you operate in, but not who you are before you had the title. So we can go all night with this, because it's from what aspect were they bashing him and or defending him, and from what area as well. You get what I'm saying? And so that's why I say, I'm all for you, speaking your feelings, speak your mind, speak your piece, get it out. I won't agree with the son going audio with that. I mean, if you're going audio for your personal being, cool. But when you decide to leak it out into the public, that is a form of disrespect. Because the stature that he's a celebrity at that. You know what I'm saying? So he's a celebrity. You're a celebrity. You're signed to a record label. You're making music. Wherever you go, you are known. You are known. You're pulling crowds of people in. So I understand why he felt the way he felt with him going live. And it's not anything. And the thing is, because I heard there's a part that hasn't been leaked, and that's the part with the therapist. So you're gonna leak everything. Don't leak bits and pieces to make you look like the victim when actually you were actually the suspect. And I posted a status, I think last week or the week before, to be careful of people who play victim and suspect at the same time. Because what happens is you're throwing what that person said to you, but you're not throwing what you caused for that to happen. So they called the therapist. Therapist was on the line trying to calm the son down. Son didn't want to hear it. Son cussed out the therapist. But then you record and leak only, because we have these devices here where we can edit and save whatever part we don't want the public to see, right? So we have these apps and these different devices where we can do that. And so the fact of the matter is that I don't blame Kurt for expressing his feelings. I do blame the son for going public, but he should have went public with the whole conclusion. What led up to him cursing at you? What led up to him saying he gonna beat your tail? What led up to that? Because ain't nobody in a rightful mind just gonna tell somebody gonna beat their tail. Everyone ain't dealing with mental illness. Everyone ain't bipolar and random. So what led to that is the question. But that's my piece. I like I said, he wasn't wrong for speaking his mind. Now I won't agree with the curse. I don't curse at all. When I'm talking, he apologized and he was sincere, and you can see it and you can even feel it. I felt the sincerity when I watched that. I think it was like 55 seconds or something like that video. I felt the sincerity, and just to go off my own little experience. I don't cuss at my kids. That's just me. I will tell them off, but there were times where I had to go back and ask for forgiveness. There were times where I had to go back and apologize. And it's not because I cuss, because I didn't cuss, but it's what I said. When I talk and when I'm at a place where I'm upset, anything will come out. And a lot of times I don't look to apologize or ask for forgiveness. There's no remorse. There should be, right? There should be, because there should be. But sometimes there isn't. But I have to, whether my wife has to remind me or someone has to remind me, you need to go back and get it right. You need to go back and apologize. You need to go back and ask for forgiveness. You were wrong for saying, you could have said it better this way. And there were times where I just said something, stuff just came out. Yeah, but I'm like, okay, no, I got to go back. And a lot of things, the humble thing to do is to ask for forgiveness and apologize. The prideful thing to do is to not acknowledge that you were wrong. And a lot of times people are so prideful is that because they don't want to apologize, because they felt not, and it's not because they felt they didn't do anything wrong. They just felt they don't owe the person an apology, even though they were wrong. And so I had to swallow up my pride. And there were times where I had to go to my sons and ask for forgiveness, tears and all, crying and all. Don't care how bad it may have hurt it. Don't care how painful it was. If I caused the trouble, I owe the apology. Right? If I'm on the other side of the field, then that's different in a sense. But it's the truth of the matter is about getting it right at the end of the day. So in that case, when it comes to, like I said, I didn't know about the molestation part until today. I think like 4 hours ago, I was reading. I was like, oh my goodness, wait, what? The mom is hiding. Okay, well, she's wrong in that point, because that, like I said, if he goes and he decides he wants to write that, and he wants to write a report on what happened, that now you have no choice. You can't keep that in home. I've seen too many people who that happened to, and their life is messed up now because it was never reported. It was never sent to the correct people. And so now you're trying to be okay with the lifestyle you really don't like or really aren't pleased with, because something was done to you in a sense and manner where now you have to put this mask on, as we talked about, and be something and somebody you really aren't, only to please people that really don't like you and really don't want nothing to do with you. And it's sad now is because people are now dealing with spirits, and they're struggling with their identity. Church has identity. No, people have an identity crisis as well, because you done did something to me, and so now you're telling me to hush and not report and not say nothing. Now I got to be this person here with stuff inside because I've dealt with things throughout my childhood or throughout my life that I felt I shouldn't have to deal with. I didn't choose for someone to touch me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about me personally. I'm just speaking generally. I didn't choose for someone to do something to me, but now I got to live this life. You want me to be quiet? And I can't tell my testimony when scripture says we overcome by the word of the testimony and by the blood of the Lamb. And I can't tell the testimony in order because what happens is, and like I tell you, Jermaine, I dealt with abuse and rejection. And so it caused me to be defensive, even to this day, very defensive, right? Because I was rejected, but I was also abused verbally and physically, mainly verbally. And I think that's a part of the reason why I have so much mouth. And so, and so I have this wall of defense up because if I feel that you're verbally abusing me, I'm going to put my wall up of defense and I'm not going to pull it down. And so I'm going to take everything out of defense because I've had to defend myself literally all my life. And so, you know, with him, maybe that's what he had to deal with. Who knows? But like I said, I see both sides of it. I see why they were going against Kurt, maybe because of the cussing part. From what I've seen, from the videos I've seen, from the statuses I've read, you didn't have to cuss him. Tell him you're going to beat his A and all this other stuff. But then by the same token, he does have a right to go back and get it right. Who are we to dismiss someone who know they did wrong and come back and admit they're wrong, but they do it with a sincere heart? I agree. There's some people that apologize just because it's the right thing to do. That's how they were raised, to apologize. But then there are some people that do it because they really are sorry. Yes, that's his son. They've been dealing with it for years. And so what happens is you build that on and you build that on and you build that on. Now, the man on the outside can't be delivered until the boy on the inside is healed. And so me dealing with abuse and rejection, the man on the inside can't be delivered until the boy on the outside is healed. You know what I'm saying? So that's my little piece there. And I don't think I'll have anything else to say, but I'm enjoying the conversation.
And then you, Kendra, do you have anything to say? Once again, not just about the Kirk Franklin, but it just all tied in. But once again, just about, family business being family business, what goes on in the house stays in the house. When is no longer family business, family business? When do you speak up? When do you not? When do you finally take off the mask? Once again, if you come from a prestigious family and you, quote unquote, once again, you're keeping shut to make the bishop look good. You're keeping shut to make the pastor look good or the family name look good. And then it's that manipulation. If you say something, you're a snitch or you're betraying the family. It's all these layers of my manipulation to keep what they're doing okay, and we got to be quiet, and we're the ones who's dealing with it. So, is there anything that you may want to say in regards to
that? Well, as far as the Kirk Franklin thing, I didn't know about the whole molestation thing until you just mentioned it, literally. But I think that was, as far as what was leaked, I feel like I agree with you. The part that was leaked was more manipulation to me, because you chose what you wanted to say. Like, to show, like, who's to say after that therapist was called, after they were done talking, he didn't already apologize to your face? Like,
right.
You don't know that. Who's to say in that moment after it was done, everybody was crying and everybody's hugging it out? Like, you don't know. So it's then to wake up the next day like, what? This is out. Now I'm going to have to face it on a different way, because people are going to judge what they want to judge. And especially if you're famous or trying to be famous or as big as Kurt, you're already dealing with trolls and crazy people already. But to give them ammunition to now be like, I
Mm-hmm.
told you he wasn't this and he wasn't that and he wasn't this and he wasn't that. Well, he's human like you're human. And I guaranteed if somebody put a light on your life, they're going to find a spot that isn't too pretty either. So,
Mm-hmm.
as far as that, I feel, I feel like, it was definitely done on purpose, and he thought the outcome was going to probably be very different than what it
Right.
was. And so he didn't get the glory maybe that he was expecting
Right.
Of
from
course not.
everybody. Um, it wasn't team I hate Kurt. I see more team I support him than team, oh my God, he's
Yeah.
canceled.
Right.
So yeah, I think that was he probably an epic fail for him. Like he
Can I
thought it
add
was gonna
something
happen
to
more. Uh-huh.
when she's done? When she's done.
Oh, okay. And then as far as the whole what happens in the house stays in the house thing, I hate it. Um, I don't operate my house that way. Um, I don't think there's anything wrong with therapy and counseling and talking to somebody outside of the family, because sometimes you need that, right? Like you need an objective person sometimes to just talk to that doesn't have the same background as you, as far as y'all came from the same person or the same grandparents or the same whatever. Because you could have one family, my family is really big as well, and you can have one family and everybody in that family could act totally different. They could have been treated all different. They could have had very different stories. They could have very different outcomes. And their stories could all start from the same one person, but they have different ideas about that same one person. And it doesn't negate that, oh, my story's right, your story's wrong. It just means my story's different. And sometimes you need to be able to talk to an outside person. I know um, for me personally, my son used to go to nativity prep um, here in Boston. And one of the things that they offered is awesome school. It's a Jesuit school, a Christian school. But one of the things that they offer for all their boys, it's an all boys school, is in-house psychiatrist. And they ask every parent, do you want them to be able to see the psychiatrist or not? And I immediately signed the paper. And I got questions like, why would you sign the paper? Ain't nothing wrong with him or whatever. And I was like, but you don't, a lot of times us as people are reactive. I wanted to be able to let you have that option before there ever was an issue. So you are used to talking to somebody other than me. Yes, we have a great relationship. Yes, we communicate all the time. Yes, you're very open with me, but maybe there's something that happens that you don't know how to tell me, or you don't want me to be mad, or you think I'm gonna be mad about. So you get what I mean? Like, so I explained, like, yeah, I signed the paper because she's just there to listen to them. They go if they want to go. It's not a permanent thing. They and it was a good thing, honestly, that I did sign the papers, because when it was time for him to transition to go down south, she helped him deal with his feelings. Do I leave and this is all I know? And then I'm going to a new place. How do I deal with that? Those are questions that she helped him be able to articulate, like that kids, when they do have big transitions in their life, are scared to be like, well, I'm scared to go here, or I really want to go, but it's a lot of unknowns. How do I deal with my thought process? And give you the tools to be able to be successful. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So that was very helpful. Even when she would reach out to me to be like, if he ever came back, he still has a place here in this school. So he can always go back to this school and pick up where he left off. That was something major for him or whatever, that he got to speak with her. But it made it easier when it was time, if he ever did want to go back, that they already had it in place. And so I didn't have to talk to the principal. Hey, is it okay if things don't work out? Can he come back? Like, it was already there. It was already documented. It was already a conversation. So I'm definitely all for that. But also, I know you mentioned molestation and all that, and being able to report it to the police or the right people, or what do you do in those circumstances? But I also think people need to recognize, what do you do in the circumstances to where they don't feel like there's a way out? They don't feel like they can go to the police. They don't feel like they can tell their family members, so they commit suicide. Then what? Because that is a major thing that has happened, continues to happen, will happen, because nobody's communicating. Yes, because you can tell the police all day something, but there have been instances where you tell the police and maybe your father's a police officer, so that gets smushed.
Right.
I don't want that shine on my family. It's going.
Yeah.
So instead of filing out the paper, they went and talked to your father. And then what if he was the one? Or what if it was his brother or his father or whatever? You know what I mean? And so you think that you're being saved by the people who's supposed to come and save you. And that's not the case. So you decide to take your life. Like, taking your life, especially in this generation and even in our generation, as the years go on, is more and more and more prevalent as an acceptable way of escape. And nobody wants to deal with that, because when you do have those funerals, it's usually weird, and it's usually like, they were such a great person, blah, 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 but you never want to, it's like the elephant in the room. You never want to talk about what happened. Now, if the person died of cancer or something, you be like, they fought the good fight and blah, 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 which is all true. I'm not downplaying none of that. But when it's those circumstances, those hit differently. And if they felt like they couldn't reach nowhere, I came to church, they ignored me. I went home, they ignored me. I went to school, nothing happened. I went here, nothing happened. And then you see these kids, and then the parent comes home and they done hung themselves in the closet. Then you're like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. And you go back and you talk to those kids' friends, and they be like, they've been crying, they've been screaming, they've been silent screaming forever. That nobody's hearing them. They try to say it was this person, but because, and it doesn't even have to be a church thing. I mean, like, I know that was the example that I gave before, but even if you don't belong to a prestigious family in church, whatever, you're still a part of a house. And sometimes there aren't avenues set up for you to express yourself in that way. And sometimes there's not people there that can help you or handle those situations in that way. And so because they're not educated, or they may not be educated in those things, there isn't anything for you to tell. Because like you said, if somebody tell you to pray it away every 5 seconds, then you pray to pray, like, okay, like I prayed 80 times and they still keep coming in my room. Like, that's where you start to, there are some people who start to create that separation of, well, this clearly ain't working. So then what? You know what I mean? Like, and I know it's not a popular thing to discuss, but it's definitely a thing to discuss. And it goes along with the what happens in the house stays in the house thing. Cause some people ain't built for that. Like
Right.
to be
Right.
quiet that long. Like
They tell everything.
yeah. And if they're not, they're cutting or they're burning
Leading.
or they're plucking. Like I've seen people pluck out their hair, like pull out their hair or their eyelash, whatever, and it's a nervous condition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there's roots to these things, but you'll see, like, if you don't know or you don't know certain signs or it never happened to you, it's very easy for you to be like, oh, she's just weird. Like, why is she always pulling out her hair? You know? Or why is he just always sitting in the corner looking? Like, people are quick to call everything weird or somebody's weird, whatever.
Right.
But if you've experienced, or if you was that person and nobody's seen you when you was their age, but you could see them. And I've seen this happen, like, to where, like you said, Jimmy, like, you'll be young and you could be tearing a hole in the floor, shouting your life away, like crying, screaming, whatever. And sometimes you, you could see it all over them. And it's a different thing that you could see. And sometimes they just need somebody to meet them in that place.
So sometimes they just need someone also that has discernment, that can see. And I'll tell you some quick
Yeah.
true story. It was I want to say maybe 3-4 weeks ago. My 5-year-old, he, ever since we've had a revival, we had 2 revivals back in earlier this year or whatever. So the first revival really sparked his love for God. It like not saying he didn't love God before, or love church before, but it really, me, from what I gather, and I could be wrong, my wife might think elsewise, or somebody else might think elsewise, but to me, it really sparked something in him to really have a real hunger and thirst to go really after God. And I said all that to say, this particular Sunday morning, service was high, thumping like usual, and he's in the back and he's dancing, and he try to do his little footwork or whatever, and I'm trying to grab his brother because, in one sense, it looked like he's about to bump into somebody. In another sense, as soon as I'm about to try to tell him to grab him, he doesn't. So I'm like, okay, he's fine. So he danced. Services, I mean, they've been going on for about 15 minutes, maybe nonstop. And he done came from the back of the church all the way to the front. By the time he's in the front at the altar, he's dancing, and it looked like he about to fall. And I try to signal my mother-in-law, like, grab him, sit him down. Grab him, sit him down. Bishop looked at me and said, no, leave him alone. He fine. He gets the mic. He has words or whatever. This is near the end of the service. And he said, I enjoyed that little one right there. Wyatt, dancing. He said, all of that really wasn't playing around. Some of that is serious. Where am I going? Because I thought I was acting like the saints of old, where just because we see them dancing, they used to say, don't play in church. No running in church, no dancing, don't dance. He said, no. He said, I'd rather them in here dance. Because at some point in time, it's going to be serious. And when they be serious and God gets a hold of them, don't you step it away. He said, but he was like, some of that was realness. He said, all of that wasn't playing around. He said, but God was using him. He said, and you said, you people, and I had to repent right then and there because I was wrong. He said, you people, you got to learn how to not see things with your natural eye, but see it with the spiritual eye. Because he said, these kids aren't always playing when they're testifying and singing and dancing. He said, but some of that is seriousness. But you got to know when it goes from flesh to all God. And so I just had to say that because you mentioned, some things and people seeing you in church and, questioning you, and they don't know your story. They don't know what you've been through. They don't know who you had to cross to get to church, who you had to hop over, what you had to go through. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't, I live with him, but I'm not in his mind.
Right.
So I don't know what thoughts might be going through his head while he's trying to get ready for church and while he's listening to his music. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he's 5 and he may not understand some things, but he's not oblivious
Right.
to he knows. He knows
Right.
exactly, you know what I'm saying? And so, that just goes back to I just had to mention that because it was just a test to exactly what you were speaking of. But yeah,
Yeah, and it's a thing because when you see that, and say you have had similar experiences, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, right? Like, because everybody's not always shouting over something
right,
crazy bad that happened to them. They could really be having a moment with God. And like you said, if you don't understand it, or you was never that person, right, to understand where that particular kid may have been, you could very easily dismiss or brush it off or be like, oh, that's cute. But if you could look and you see, like, like you could see yourself in them, it adjusts very differently.
right.
And you could see things very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And you're always asking, I know for me personally, I'm always asking, ever since I was little, asking God for discernment and for knowledge. And knowledge entails so much, right? Of understanding and articulation and all those other things. But it's also the little things, being able to just sit back and see, like, y'all are taking maybe this episode that's happening in the front of the church as like, oh, they're always shouting. Oh my God, sit down. And if you just like take a moment and step back and discern it, talk to God,
Mm-hmm.
have a moment with Him, He could show you something totally different, to where then
Yeah.
in turn you may get up and start praising
Mm-hmm.
God too, not for you, but maybe you need to help them out because something was pricked in your heart and you remember when that was you and you had that moment. I feel like uh, uh as far as the, like you said, what happens in the house stays in the house thing, just because we may be like on in this conversation may not subscribe to that, doesn't mean that everybody still doesn't subscribe to that, right? And there's still
Right.
people who are going through those things to say, oh my gosh, I can't communicate. I can't tell nobody this is happening to me.
Right.
But when they get to church and they have their moment, or they're shouting, or they're praising, or they're worshiping, or whatever, that could be their moment of release all week. The only
Mm-hmm.
time, ain't nobody coming to mess with them. Ain't nobody gonna come, be quiet, girl, sit down. Their only moment to have to have. And you
Right.
have to sit back and discern those things, because sometimes it's just that. And so, as to what you were saying, I don't feel like that is healthy. What happens in this house stays in. I don't think it's
Right.
healthy at all.
Especially when it comes to that, like molestation, if it's you're not comfortable, you feel unsafe, you don't feel protected, you feel
Yeah,
abusive, especially
verbal
if you're a
abuse, all
child.
of that.
If you're a
You
child,
can
you're an
tell.
innocent adult, right? That shouldn't stay there, because somewhere along the line, kids now, they know how to tell somebody outside of the home. One thing they're gonna do, if they can't talk to someone in home, they're gonna talk to
They're gonna
someone
find
outside the
somebody to
home
talk to.
and let them know, I don't feel safe at
Yeah,
home.
and you can
Mom,
tell
mom
sometimes
and
even
dad is
by
doing
their
this and they're doing
reaction.
that.
Though, if they automatically flinch soon as you go to see
Yeah.
them, you be like, "What's wrong with
And
you?"
I'm still learning, because I do that with my, they be like, and no, I'm not gonna hit you. Why? Because my thing a lot of times was I was doing it wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
was disciplining, but I was doing it out of the wrong. I was doing it while I was angry and mad,
Mm-hmm.
instead of waiting until I calmed down and the situation died down a little bit, now let's go back and revisit the situation. Instead, it's do it and then think after. By that time, it's already late. It's already done. So in cases like that, no, that should not stay. No, it shouldn't. If we're struggling with food or we're behind on rent, we're gonna get evicted. Now that people will keep that in, but then they'll also, by the same time, it will leave outside, but it will leave to those that they can trust to
but
assist.
I feel like
and
even
aid.
in that, sometimes that's detrimental because you could be hungry all day, and you could be at the end, like the sign could be on your door, right? But as we have previously stated, the church is supposed to be the hospital, right? And the church, we're supposed to take care of our own, like family is church is whatever. Now, if you can't, because I've seen this happen too,
right?
Be hungry all day
and
they get mad because the church ain't offering you assistance because you're hungry.
I've seen it the other way around, where you're hungry, they offer you something, but it's out of the wrong spirit, out of the wrong heart, out of the wrong mindset, and it's to the point where, okay, no,
then you
can keep it.
I wouldn't want
or they do it with no one knowing, but now that you're all set, now they go and tell, well, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have had this and you wouldn't have had that. And that there is that's a pet peeve of mine. I dislike that. If you're gonna do something, if I'm coming to you in private and not public, I expect you to do it in private and keep it in private. You're gonna look out for me, that's fine, but don't go. Now, if I say, hey, I just had to testify and give honor to Sister Johnson. I was hungry one day and I went to her and she took care of me, no questions asked, no funny feeling. Now that's a different story.
Yeah,
if you get up and testify, so and so said they act like they were hungry. How do you know they weren't? How do you know they didn't eat? Well, they did you see them? Because we tend to judge out of the wrong spirit. Yes, you can judge, but people judge in error. They judge wrong. Right. So that but
yeah, and it's a double-edged sword because there are benevolent funds to where you can help, and there are people and things set up in certain churches to help certain people or whatever, and it's help. I mean, like, that's what the church is supposed to do. It's supposed to help. Like, you can't be helping the whole world in your whole sanctuary starving. Like, you gotta help in-house too, but you can't though say, if you never asked or nobody ever knew you was hungry or nobody knew that you was about to be evicted, whatever, be like, well, I've been at this church for so long and nobody offered me anything.
Well, closed mouths don't get fed.
Yeah, like you can't do that. But there are people who do that all the time. And they be like, oh, they just want my this, or they just want me to sing, and they just and nobody asked me anything. Well, it goes both ways too. If you act like you got it all together every Sunday and you don't, you got your kids and y'all better be quiet, don't say nothing, you ain't hungry, you ain't this, or you don't need assistance for this, or blah blah blah, then you turn around and you say you're hungry or you was hungry for this whole time, you can't judge the church for doing something they didn't know about. And then
first thing they'll say is, I didn't know.
Yeah, because in all honesty, a lot of times people don't know. And
because a lot of people are private with their life. So anything that's going on, especially if it requires assistance, if you can't do it on your own for the time being, or well, I didn't know, someone's sick, say for instance, Jermaine's sick, and he come out, y'all ain't come visit me. We didn't know you were sick.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And people can't use that.
I feel like it's a past thing. Yeah, it's a past thing, because because the church you might have used to grew up in played you, does not mean the current situation is going to play you. Right? So you have to give the same chance as well as being able to speak up for yourself. But I know that's slightly off topic. Sorry, Jermaine.
Yeah.
It's
But
okay. But it's a double-edged sword, like, and that's when, once again, I think it all goes back to communication, especially in the Black households, especially in the Black church. You keep your mouth shut. You don't say nothing. Once again, we've all been actors, because I'm sorry to say, but I want to say in 90%, I'll give a high percentage, we've been taught to fake it, act like we're okay. Once again, we learned at a young age, fix your face. We learned at a young age to fix our faces and wipe your eyes, and you could have just got
ain't nothing wrong with you.
Right.
And
you better grab that tear. It better not fall.
You better act. You better fix your leg. You better
Hey,
act like.
and then they tell you, then they'll tell you, hush, if I give you something to cry about. Then you cry. You better not cry.
Right. Like, you just destroyed me. Of course I'm crying.
Right. So I just think it's breaking down that layer of, first of all, deprogramming yourself. One thing, once again, and I don't believe in church, but I do believe, like, as y'all said, it's the balance.
Right.
Knowing when to ask, who to ask, how to ask, knowing, because once again, you could have asked, and like you said, somebody went and told all your business, and now you don't ever want to ask again. So
yeah, but I feel like that's accountability too, Jermaine, because say I asked you for something, and Elder Hill came through, right? After I asked you, and you told the whole world what I asked you, and you gave it to me, it's up to him as your brother in Christ, as who he is to you, to be like, that ain't a good look. Like, don't do that again. You know what I mean? Like, you need to go back, and like he's been saying this whole time, sometimes when he referenced his wife telling him to go back and make sure stuff was right with his sons, it's accountability. Because if I'm accountable to you and you're accountable to me, and every time, say I do something out of order or you do something out of order, then you come back and correct me. As time goes, time progresses, the future goes on, it'll be less checking you will have to do, because you already know, oh, that's not rocking over here. You're not about to air somebody's business out. You're not going to make them feel bad for asking. Once people know the standard of their circle or their church or their environment, we're not going to go do that. It's less opportunity for you to now display everybody's business. Less opportunity for you to make people feel bad for asking for help. Less opportunity for you to mess up somebody's character because you just had a bad day. You know, so accountability along with that communication matters. Like, and that word is powerful, but nobody wants to be accountable. They want they want to tell you what to do. But if you turn around and be like, you is out of order, sis. You is out of order, bro. I feel like you should go fix this, fix that. They're going to be like, why are you telling me? Blah, 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 blah. No, one to another. Accountability is big. And you shouldn't, once the standard is raised, it shouldn't be put down, regardless if that's your friend, that's your best friend, that's your sister, that's your brother, that's your auntie, whatever. If they recognize his accountability is the same for Kendra, Elder Marcus, this one, that one, they're not going to bring you all of that. They're going to be like, nah, he's going to stop me in my tracks before I even start talking.
And you know what? Sometimes they won't hold them accountable based off relationship.
Yeah.
And they won't tell either based off who they're connected to. And then sometimes people won't tell unless someone else has came forth in the public side. If they seen one or two or three people have come, then
then they have
this
courage.
person, that person, now they have courage, and now it won't make them look bad because 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, however many people, like there's a few situations I can name and a few people, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want nobody to inbox me with craziness. But there's a few situations and people that I can name off the bat where, you know, the person didn't come clean about what happened to him until about 4 or 5 or 6 other people came before him. Then he had courage and was able to tell his story. But for
because
years,
he probably didn't feel like he was going to be out there by himself. That fear is
right.
real.
And like I said, it's that attack thing too. Like I said, and then I'm about to let you go because I feel like I've been holding out hostage. But it's that attack thing too. Like once again, if you say something, it just has to deal with you or people they don't know. And it's like, yes, I'm glad you said something. I'm glad you're free. But if it's somebody that, no offense, but like we all fall short of the glory. But there's a lot of people that are preachers, that are pastors, that are just, and just even outside the church, that are in positions that really should not be there. And they do some jacked up stuff. But because we've been manipulated not to say nothing, not to speak up, you're a snitch. You're going to make the church look bad. You're going to make the pastor look bad. You're going to make the family look bad. All this other stuff. They're there. And then once again, if you say something, the whole church is going to attack you. You're not going to talk about my pastor, you're not about my leader. And then when more people come forward and people start telling the truth, it's like, dang, maybe we shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
Dang, I kind of feel
Absolutely.
bad. Now it's more people are coming out, and it took one person, and it's like, dang. By all means, I will fight to the death for my mother, for my father, for my pastor now, my late bishop. However,
you have the right.
don't cuss me out, nobody. But if people came forward, one person, I might be like, you're not gonna talk about my pastor. But I still might, from someone who's been molested, someone who's been in those places, I've learned to fall back because I know how it was for me when I came forward. You get what I'm saying? So it's a double-edged sword. But then when 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6 people come forward, it's like, you know what, dang, that's still my man of God, that's still my pastor, that's still my friend. However, this ain't it. And I just think it's that balance of, if I say something, they're all going to attack me. But if more people come forward, there's power to numbers sometimes. And I just think we as the church have to be careful. We as the church have to make sure that when they come to us, whether it's us, whether it's the church in general, they can put their mask down. They can be honest. No matter what it is, no matter who it's about, have discernment. Hear what they're saying. Don't just listen, but hear what they're saying. See their heart. Pray. Try the spirit. All these different things. And let's break these layers down. Let's not let people come to the church in their 20s trying to get an answer, and they don't get their answers until their 40s because we, even in the church, even some of us don't say nothing, just keep it cool. And it's just like a lot of that stuff has just got to stop. It get from homes to churches to wherever. And I just think that a lot, like you said, Sister Kendra, a lot of us would not have to be. Elder James Hills, if he's watching, what did he used to tell us? Get it right in your 20s, so that way when you're not in your 30s and your 40s. But once again, just some of the structures of households and churches and families and what's a snitch, what's not a snitch, what you're making look bad, and you're only doing it because you're doing it out of spite. And I'm not doing it out of spite. I am doing it out of spite. I've been spiteful for the last 10 years, 20 years of my life. I don't want to be spiteful no more. So you're right. I am doing because I'm done being spiteful. I'm done being bitter. I'm done upholding this end. And luckily, I'm one of the ones who didn't take my life, like you said, Sister Kendra. And I wanted to say one last thing, so we can go. But even like when you said about the praising, the church might be the only place sometimes that people can scream. Why they shout out the whole service, morning service, afternoon service, and evening service. That might be the only place because when they go home,
because if they go to the club, right?
When they go home, they can't do that because there's no peace there. They can't just let loose and scream.
Look, you know what? And let me say this out of experience.
Yeah, and the last one, Sister Kendra, I remember one time Bishop has said, even sometimes if a person comes to the church and they fall asleep, don't wake them up.
Yeah,
I remember that. At home, they might not get no sleep on the job. That church might be the only place of peace that they have. Maybe don't let them sleep the whole service, but if they come in there and you see them nose it off, let them go in the side room and take a quick nap because they might have not gotten no rest the whole week. They might not have and once again, the keeping it quiet, not saying nothing, the shame and all this, they might not have had no place to stay the whole week. And that's the first place that they actually sat down and actually felt at peace and actually dozed off. So, we just have to really be careful. And if we can just start, I would love to have a part 2 with y'all, but, we really need to just break.
Yeah, we could plan it. We could plan it. You know what? The whole let them pray till they don't praise at home. I had to learn that because they even want to pray, they'll and it's to the point now where they love Ty Tribbett, they love one of them love Kurt Franklin, one love Judah Band, they love who they love, you get what I'm saying? And so it's to the point now where they want a praise break every day, all day. But I give them a time limit. Okay, you can't do it after this certain time. You go ahead, have your church service. What we used to do, we try to implement them listening to music at night, thinking they will go to sleep. That don't work for them. They be up dancing, praising, hear them singing. And I'm like, no, it's late, y'all. Early in the morning. And I'll never forget it. One Sunday morning, my 5-year-old, he woke up before me. He woke me up, and he said, "Come on, let's go. Gotta get the atmosphere set. Put the music on. I'm dressed for church. I already ate breakfast." He's his own cereal. But that goes to show you that they're learning, and some of them don't just do it at church, but these kids do it here. And this is, Jermaine, this is every day. I mean, Monday through Sunday. It's every if there isn't no church, they'll ask, is there church? They've been home since we was in revival from Monday to Friday. They've been home since I think maybe Wednesday, because they runny nose and bad cough, and I didn't want to bring them to church and they get it around, because there've been other kids who will come in their sickness, their parents will bring them and they will catch what those kids had. So I'm not the tit for tat person, you get what I'm saying? So y'all stay home, mom stay home with them. And he was sad yesterday because he couldn't go to church. And he looked at me and, I'm like, I don't want you to, I want you to feel 100% before you go. You know what I'm saying? And so and I'm saying that to say a lot of times people don't know what kids go through even when they're young, just so they can get to church. I mean, these kids love church. And I was like that too when I was younger. You if you didn't find me at a basketball court, I was at somebody's church. If my church didn't have church, I was at somebody's church. That's just what I did all the way up to a grown man. I mean, I'd be at 4 or 5 services a day. You couldn't tell me nothing because I love church. My church get out, I'm going to the next service. That church, it was just repetitive. That's just what it was. So, Jermaine, you may need a part 2, man.
All right.
You can't squeeze everything in.
Right. We did a lot. I'm going to break this up too. Bump that to a 2-part.
I was about to say, you can have a couple of episodes with this conversation.
Right.
Because it's so much that it entails, and people tend to overlook conversation. Not saying no other subject or topics need attention, but stuff like this should be spoken about, right? Because it gets overlooked. And it's very important that if we should be able to go to any place, we should be able to go to the house of God if we can't go anywhere else. I'm not saying there's something wrong with outside help, outside therapy, outside counseling, but if the church is supposed to be the hospital, it's supposed to be a place where we're able to get help and get that advice and get that, encouragement and prayer, or what have you, then it should be done with a kindness and loving kindness mindset and attitude and things of that nature. So I enjoy this, man. It was very interesting, and I learned a lot myself. So
I'm
thanks for the invite, Jermaine.
Yeah, I appreciate it, sister. All right.
Maybe
go ahead.
Oh no, I'm good.
All right. I want to thank you two for coming on today, and I'll be reaching out to y'all for a part 2.
Okay.
Well, thank you all for tuning into the Maine-J Show. I hope that something that was said from my 2 panelists, my 2 guests, blessed you. Hopefully something that I said or experienced or went through helped and blessed you as well. As you heard them, there will be a part 2 coming, so make sure that y'all all tune in. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Maine-J Show. Until the next time, peace and God bless.